Good afternoon, welcome back to another video on the channel. So this video is just going to be focused a little bit on Raducanu after her 3-set defeat in the first round of the US Open against Sofia Kenin, which was a very disappointing result in what has been a strange and difficult few months for Raducanu on the court. So going back to the very start, I feel like that US Open win was a huge moment in the sport for British tennis in particular and the career of Emma Raducanu. Nobody in the world expected to see Raducanu do what she did back then. She was an unranked player, ranked around 400 in the world. Very few people knew about her, and she won 4 qualifying rounds and 7 main draw matches, all in straight sets, to become US Open champion. And that is such an incredible achievement that, without doubt, will go down in the history books. She'll forever be remembered for that. But I feel like now is the time to sort of start looking forwards rather than backwards. And that's partly the reason why I'm doing this video piece, to say what I think she can do better next year and how I think she can really progress in her career and look to challenge for Grand Slams and Masters titles again. So from that US Open win, obviously comes a huge amount of pressure, fame, sponsorship, money, and that obviously presents its difficulties. And I feel like when you are an unranked player, and she was hoping to just win one match at the US Open back in 2021, to go on and win that title, you can't really comprehend how big of a deal it is and how you're going to cope with that pressure. I initially felt like Raducanu did a good job. I thought she was humble, very dedicated to the sport, didn't skip training sessions, wanting to get back out on court and wanted to progress up the rankings and play regular tennis and, get to the top 10 and win majors again. And even when she was changing coaches, I didn't think it was too much of a problem. It wasn't like Raducanu. She was propelled into that position from winning the US Open. And I feel like she wanted to test the waters with a number of different coaches and see who would be willing to travel with her, who matched her style of tennis, who she really worked with well on and off the court. And I feel like she was experimenting a lot, but I didn't see particularly a problem with that. She was learning things from different coaches. And I feel like the surgeries as well, again, not ideal for a young player to go through so many surgeries. And I feel like that could be the reason why she's not playing as much as we'd like, because there's still an air of caution. And it's whether her body can really deal with the exertions of the tour, because it is very physical and tough and demanding on the body. But it's now 3 years since the US Open, and I don't want to make this video look like I'm really criticising Raducanu or outing her for the past few months. Ultimately, we can only judge what we see in the court and what we hear in interviews. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors and how hard she is working, and whether she is, again, suffering with injuries or still suffering the consequences of those surgeries in terms of the physicality that she's able to produce in the court consistently. But I feel like when it's 3 years on from the US Open, I'm hearing too much from Raducanu, as I say, just in interviews I've heard, about what happened in the past in terms of being a major winner. Nobody can ever take that off me. It's so special to come back to the US Open at a place that I won the major title. And a lot of the conversation in interviews from Raducanu is about what she's done in the past. And there's no downplaying how incredible that achievement was. It will never be taken away. And it was one of the best things to ever happen in tennis in terms of how big of an achievement it was and how unexpected it was. But it comes to a point where you've got to move on with your career. She's 21 years old. She's a huge talent. She's got lots of natural talent in the game. And although it was an incredible achievement, you've got to look forward. And I'm not seeing that same desire and fire to win from Raducanu as I think we were a few years ago. And I'd like to see Raducanu talk more about the future in terms of wanting to win major titles again, wants to get to the top 10, wants to challenge for Masters titles consistently. And we see her on court a lot more, because this year we just haven't seen enough of her on court. We've seen her in times play very strong tennis, and she's had some good wins. She had a decent run at Wimbledon and followed it up with a quarterfinal at the City Open, which she lost against Badosa, which was, not an ideal defeat, but it was a good test. She stood up well physically in that match, and we know Badosa is a top 10 player on her day. But she withdrew from the Olympics to focus on the US Hardcore Tour and played just one tournament. She withdrew from 2 Masters events because she had to go through qualifying. Didn't have the match practice going into the US Open. Is now being dumped out in the first round off, albeit, Kenin, a former Grand Slam champion. She's a good player. She was in decent form. It's not necessarily a terrible defeat. But from Raducanu, you just want to see more in terms of consistent performances and results. And I feel like there's a few different reasons why we're not seeing that. And one is I feel like she needs stability now with a long-term coach. She's switching coaches too often. As I say, in her early career after she won the US Open, I didn't think it was really a problem. She was learning different things from different coaches. She was testing the water, seeing who would be willing to work with her long term and how she developed their relationship on and off the court. So I think to go through a number of coaches wasn't necessarily a bad thing. But now she really needs to find someone that matches her style of tennis that she wants to play, that's willing to travel with her all year round. She needs to find a way of being able to consistently fight and stand up physically on court and be able to consistently play events throughout the year, because I feel like Raducanu is such a better player in terms of timing as other players are when she's playing consistent tennis and getting that match practice in. I think match practice is huge for Raducanu. To play just one US hardcourt event after withdrawing from the Olympics is just very strange. To withdraw from 2 Masters events without being injured is just a sign of, does she really want to play qualifiers? Does she feel like she deserves to be in the main draws? Well, unfortunately, tennis is quite a brutal sport, and just because you won the US Open a few years ago doesn't mean you should be in the main draw of Masters events and Grand Slams. They're not a given. There's plenty of other players that are playing week in, week out and climbing the rankings consistently, playing good, strong tennis. And that's something that you have to be willing to do as well. And I feel like Raducanu is a player that, she's got huge potential still. She's very capable of climbing the rankings and being a top 20 player, reaching quarterfinals and semi-finals consistently. We've seen it in the past. She's beat some of the best players in the world with stunning tennis. And as I said, I don't want this video to come across as if I'm criticising her, because I'm saying this because I know how good she can be. And I want to see Raducanu represent British tennis in the best way possible and really fulfill her potential. But there's just a few signs at the moment in terms of pulling out of events, in terms of really talking about that US Open win still. And although she's never going to downplay that, and she's always going to be hugely and immensely proud of that achievement, as she should be, I would like to see her look forwards more than backwards. And instead of focusing on what you've achieved 3 years ago, talk about that fire and desire and will to win and will to get back where you were, in terms of she should be wanting to challenge for Grand Slams again and Masters and getting back in the top 10. And I'm just not hearing enough about that. So yeah, next year I really want to see Raducanu play consistently. And even if it's at a lower level, even if it's just about winning tournaments or reaching semi-finals and finals, get as much match practice in as possible, traveling the world, getting used to the rigorous tour, that would be completely understandable. But I think the most important thing for Raducanu is getting that match practice in, building the body physically, getting used to the tour, getting a long-term coach, starting to win matches again to build that confidence and climb the rankings more importantly. I think, the more she climbs the rankings, the less qualifying round she'll have to go through. And, if she can get main draws into Masters and Grand Slams, then fantastic. We could see Raducanu make memorable runs again. But at the moment, I'm just not seeing enough fight and desire and will to play those early tough stages. And it's disappointing, but I hope Raducanu does really push on next year and recognises the mistakes that she's made. She is still a very young player. She's very inexperienced in the tour, and I think you've got to forgive her for that. But 3 years on from the US Open win, you'd expect to see a little bit more progress and stability by now. So hopefully see it next year. So thanks for watching this video. I hope it didn't come across as I was really criticising Raducanu, because I'm a huge fan of her. Watching her win the US Open a few years ago was one of my favourite ever sporting moments. But we need more of the same. She's a very young player, got 15 years plus left on the tour if she really wants to be a professional tennis player and chase all the different goals and achievements and titles and rankings that I think she has the talent to do. So yeah, hopefully we see a very strong 2025 from Raducanu. If you have enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a subscription. I will be producing more videos throughout the US Open as well, predicting the last 16 onwards on the men's and women's side. And if you would like to leave a comment on what you think of Emma Raducanu and the changes she could perhaps make next year, I do always enjoy reading those. So thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.